right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Jordan Uhl with you guys. Jordan's on Rebel Headquarters. He's got the Insurgents podcast. We have a bit of an insurgency right here. We've got a couple of insurgencies, in fact. Last night, we revealed our new Rebellion PAC candidate, J.D. Scholten, running for the Senate seat in Iowa. A good chance of picking that up, and if he does, it'll make a massive difference and as good a populist as you'll ever find. So check out ScholtenForIowa.com. Okay, tonight we've got the podcasters breaking with Trump. That's generally a good thing. And then we have MAGA breaking with Trump on two different things. One is great, the other not so good. We don't agree with that one, right? So lots of interesting dynamics in politics that people did not expect, but here we are with disagreements everywhere, okay? Which I find to be a very positive development. All right, Jordan, which one are we starting with?
Take a look at this.
The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the White House yesterday and used the best possible tactic when trying to get something from Donald Trump: flattery and praise. He presented Trump with a letter nominating him for a Nobel Peace Prize for his role in brokering the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Maybe Bibi remembered that back in February at their previous meeting, and many times since then, Trump told reporters that he deserved the prize. Take a look.
Mr. President, you managed to get this deal done. A lot of people say that the men who managed to do that should get a Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think that you'll be able to get all the hostages back home? And what will happen if you hear from the Israeli side?
They will never give me a Nobel Peace Prize.
What would happen if the Israeli...
I deserve it, but they will never give it to me.
I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. I should get it for the, I would think the Abraham Accords would be a good one too. But they won't give me a Nobel Peace Prize because they only give it to liberals.
Mr. Prime Minister, I was wondering whether you think that Donald Trump, for his effort in Ukraine and otherwise, deserves to be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
No, I cannot comment on that.
Mr. President,
But thank you very much for that question. I like that question.
Ironically, as these men patted themselves on the back and claimed worthiness of a Nobel Peace Prize, they also promoted displacement of millions of Palestinians. But before we get to that, Cenk, what do you make of this nomination? Do you think Donald Trump has a chance?
Yeah, I think he does have a chance. And in fact, I'm going to tell you guys a scenario where he would get the Nobel Peace Prize. That's coming up in a little bit. But first, does he deserve it now? Oh no, no. Look, in order to get a Nobel Peace Prize, you have to get the peace. Right now, Israel and the Palestinians are not at all at peace. Israel's still in the middle of their genocide, and we're still in the middle of paying for it. And Donald Trump is still in the middle of kissing Netanyahu's ass and sending him bigger checks. He says, "Oh, I got a ceasefire between Iran and Israel." Well, we could have gotten that if you hadn't bombed them in the first place. So, I mean, the ceasefire between us and Iran existed before Donald Trump started, dropping bunker busters on them. So you can't start a war and then stop it and go, "Now give me the peace prize." That's not how it works. Now there is a scenario in which he gets it, but before I tell you that scenario and we tell you the new horrors that the Israeli government is planning in Gaza, because as Netanyahu was here, as Jordan's going to explain in a second, their defense minister was explaining the camps they're setting up for the Palestinians. It's, as usual, one of the more disgusting things you'll hear. But speaking of disgusting, we're forcing you to do the vote for one of these two characters in our live chat. We've watched the show, obviously, live, 6 to 8 o'clock today. Who deserves the Nobel Prize less, Trump or Netanyahu? I mean, in a sense, we're asking you to vote positively for Trump because it can't be Netanyahu, okay? But But okay, that's a super tough choice, sort of make you go through that, okay? But yeah, neither one of them deserve it at all, not even close. Netanyahu is the exact opposite. He deserves the Hague, and Trump TBD. But first, let's tell you about the horrors that Israel has coming up for the Palestinians next.
Yeah, let's talk about what else they discussed. Back in February, Trump proposed plans for the United States to take ownership of Gaza and to develop it into the Riviera of the Middle East. But he later shied away from that horrific idea. During yesterday's meeting, a reporter in the room asked Trump if his relocation plan for Palestinians was still on the table. Trump redirected the question to Bibi, and here was his response.
I think President Trump had a brilliant vision. It's called free choice. You know, if people want to stay, they can stay. But if they want to leave, they should be able to leave. It shouldn't be a prison. It should be an open place and give people a free choice. We're working with the United States very closely about finding countries that will seek to realize what they always say, that they want to give the Palestinians a better future. And those who, and I think we're getting close to finding several countries, and I think this will give, again, the freedom to choose. Palestinians should have it, and I hope that we can secure it close by.
And we've had great cooperation from surrounding Israel, surrounding countries, great cooperation from every single one of them. So something good will happen.
Neither leader provided any details beyond that. Trump claimed other nations were cooperating, but Jordan and Egypt have previously shot down and outright condemned the proposal as forced displacement, which is illegal under international law. In February, UN spokesman Stephanie Dujarric said that any forced displacement of people is tantamount to ethnic cleansing, and Palestinian leaders were quick to dispute Netanyahu's claim that he wants Gazans to have free choice over whether or not to leave. Mustafa Barghouti, a senior Palestinian politician, says, when they say it would be voluntary, that is so misleading. Because when you bomb people every day, when you starve people for 126 days, who can call that a voluntary decision? Now, aside from Netanyahu, other Israeli officials have different but equally barbaric ideas for what to do with Palestinians. Defense Minister Israel Katz says he's instructed the IDF to develop a plan to establish a new, quote, humanitarian city in the demolished Gaza city of Rafah that Palestinians won't be allowed to leave. The idea of the zone, according to Katz, is to accommodate initially some 600,000 Palestinians who have been living in the Mawasi area on the coast since they were displaced from elsewhere in the Strip after screening them to ensure Hamas operatives are not among them. According to Katz's vision, the entire civilian population of Gaza, more than 2 million people, would eventually be congregated in the zone while the IDF secures it from a distance as international bodies work to manage the area. Don't worry though, because a whopping 4 additional aid distribution sites would be established in the area. Katz also emphasized his ambition to encourage Palestinians to, quote, voluntarily emigrate from the Gaza Strip to other countries, saying this plan, quote, should be fulfilled. Cenk, are you encouraged at all by this plan?
No, it's a monstrous, horrific, genocidal plan. Netanyahu, you heard him say, oh, you know, Gaza's not a prison. It's an open place. They should have free choice. And then as he's saying that, on the same day, his defense minister is saying, no, we're gonna take all of the Palestinians, 2.2 million of them, stuff them into a tiny area. I'm gonna give you a sense of how tiny it is in a second. And they're never allowed to leave. I mean, they'll be allowed to leave if they're going to get expelled to a different country. IDF already occupies 70% of Gaza. They plan to occupy more of it, and that's going to be Israel's. And so, look, I'm going to get into the pattern of how they do this in a second. But to give you a sense of the context of how small Gaza is the size of Vegas. It is 1/3 of the size of Hiroshima. By the way, Israel has dropped enough bombs on that tiny little area already It's the equivalent of 8 atomic bombs in a place that is the size of a third of Hiroshima. I mean, they have already obliterated it. What part of this is free to go, open, not a prison? So is this forced displacement, as the Palestinians say? Well, of course it is. It's not, none of this is voluntary. No, and by the way, this happens in almost every genocide. The empire will pick, the rebels that are rebelling against them, call them terrorists, and say they're hiding in the civilian population. That's why we had to murder the civilians. What the Nazis said about the French resistance. The French resistance was hiding in the population. You know why? Because they had no military barracks, they had lost. They were in hiding from the Nazis who were trying to hunt them down. And the Germans said, well, they're in the civilian population, so we can kill as many as we like. And by the way, the Turks did the same thing with the Armenians. They're hitting us from behind their civilians. And they're hitting us right next to the Russian border. We have to move them, we have to displace them. And they're free to leave. They should leave the Ottoman Empire. They should leave entirely, okay? And if they don't leave, we're gonna make them leave, and then we're gonna kill them along the way. It's exactly what Israel's doing. Exactly what Israel's doing. There's nothing voluntary about it at all. They didn't voluntarily get slaughtered. They didn't hide behind human shields. No, Israel chose to kill their civilians. Over 30,000 dead women and children at a bare minimum. 56,000 dead overall at a bare minimum, let alone the people buried in the rubble that they haven't actually put names to yet, but there are tens of thousands under the rubble as well. So look, so now that's Gaza, that tiny area that I described. Defense Minister Katz is talking about a microscopic area within Gaza. How is he gonna stuff 2 million people into that area? I mean, at a minimum, that's a prison, the exact opposite of what Netanyahu said. And Netanyahu is a legendary liar. I don't know that I've ever met anyone in public life, seen anyone in public life that is a bigger liar than Benjamin Netanyahu. Almost every time he speaks, he doesn't just lie a little, he says the exact opposite of what's true. And so, but you'd be lucky if we call it a prison, because what it really looks like is a concentration camp. And that's very literal. It'll be a camp where they concentrate 2 million Palestinians into a tiny little area, and the IDF will be controlling it from a distance, meaning if you try to leave, they'll murder you. It's a concentration camp they're setting up in Gaza. So if that hurts your feelings, you're nuts. You're nuts, you're nuts. What happened to the Jews in the Holocaust was awful, disastrous, horrific. You shouldn't then go, because of that, we get to set up a camp and you're not allowed to call it anything. I'm gonna use my religion as a weapon against you. You're not allowed to criticize my beloved Israel at all. No. Don't you see that you're setting up the same thing the Germans set up? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? You think it's okay to murder 17,000 children because you think maybe 1 or 10 or 100 Hamas guys were hiding behind them, and that's why Israel had to murder them? And they say, well, the Palestinians will walk onto a bus and do a bomb from however many years ago. You know, if you drop a bomb from a plane, it's the same thing. It's actually worse because it's a 2,000-pound bomb and it kills every civilian underneath it, including all the kids. So the Israeli defense for why they're not terrorists is, yes, we kill way more civilians than Hamas does. We killed 500 times the number of children that Hamas did. But since we drop our bombs from planes, we are not terrorists. We are a very sophisticated Western country, okay? And we're protecting civilization from the monster, terrible Palestinians who have all that land that I want. That's why I gotta stuff them into a camp. No, Israel's position, 1,000% indefensible. If you're still trying to defend it, you're looking like a monster. So, okay, you could choose to look like a monster, that's up to you. But I'm against all genocides. I'm against all Holocausts. I'm against killing all civilians, Israeli, Palestinian, or otherwise. If you don't think Palestinian lives matter, you're a terrible, terrible, terrible person. So I just want to be super clear about that. So look, all of this has nothing to do with peace. One last thing for now, Jordan. The important part, one of the most important parts here is Israel's never going to be satisfied. So there is no ceasefire. You know what they're offering Hamas right now? They're saying, okay, give us all the hostages back, and in return, we'll give you a 60-day ceasefire. And Hamas is saying, but that's useless. After 60 days, you're just gonna go back to murdering us all. And Netanyahu is saying, yeah, and we're gonna set up a concentration camp and stuff you in there, and we're gonna try to ship you out, and we're gonna take all of Gaza. So, I mean, I hope Hamas is weak enough to say yes to that ceasefire, but they would have to be impotent, total weaklings to say, yes, we get nothing in return, nothing. Okay, yeah, Israel can occupy Gaza forever. We get 60 days of a ceasefire, which we all know Israel will break on the 3rd day. It's all nonsense. So we give them the hostages back and they get to keep Gaza? Where the hell's the deal? Well, how's that a peace deal? And so all of this is backed up by the monstrous American politicians, Trump and Biden. Yes, Trump is worse so far. And the American media who are like, oh yeah, Netanyahu says he's giving freedom to the Palestinians and the Palestinians can go wherever they like. Oh, how benevolent of the beautiful Israel and their most moral army. I mean, the propaganda is sickening. And isn't it embarrassing if you work in mainstream media? Aren't you, how do you look at yourself in the mirror? How are you not incredibly embarrassed at the nonsense propaganda you do for a genocidal government? And then anyone who criticizes them, you're like, you're a bad person. Defending a genocide is what a good moral person would do. Trying to stop a genocide, anti-Semite, anti-Semite, anti-Semite. You're all immoral for trying to stop a genocide. No, we're not. The American media and the American politicians, and especially Donald Trump at this moment, are deeply, deeply, deeply immoral. Yes, I have a way out, but no, they'll never do it.
Yeah, I think the point in that plan that's key is the IDF will secure it from a distance. How is that dissimilar from what Gaza was like pre-October 7th? Other than it's significantly smaller and you have a higher concentration of people living in an even smaller area. What we have seen since, and of course they're talking about, oh, we're gonna filter through the crowd. We're gonna go through everybody and inspect everybody to make sure there's no Hamas operatives that get in there. We have seen time and time again, the IDF is not responsible. It is not diligent. It is not ethical in how they respond to or analyze the potential involvement of somebody living in Gaza as it relates to potential Hamas involvement. And we have heard accounts from people living in Gaza, from Palestinians, even from IDF soldiers. They have used this kind of hollow, flimsy justification. Oh, well, yeah, they could be Hamas operatives. They could be a Hamas fighter. And they have killed civilian after civilian after civilian, deep down knowing that these people had nothing to do with Hamas. So I don't have a lot of faith in the IDF's ability to responsibly go through this crowd of 600,000 people and say, yeah, you're fine, go. Because as we saw with the US's war in the Middle East, any military age male, and in this case, and in our case in the Middle East, but also in the IDF's case here, oftentimes younger men are unjustly and unfairly grouped in with Hamas. So I think we will see potentially a massacre if this plan is implemented and people start getting ushered into this very small part of Gaza. This isn't a path to the future. And as you laid out, Cenk, it doesn't answer lingering questions, urgent questions about what happens to that land overall, because this seems like a setup where to the international community and to its partners and allies, they can say, oh, look, we're hands up, we're just protecting them from a distance. We're just enforcing it from a distance. But all of the land that they will very likely seize if this plan is implemented will just now suddenly be Israel's, which is what they want, like you're saying. They want that beachfront property. They want to develop it. People like Trump and his allies certainly want to get their hands on it so they can build coastal real estate, apartment complexes, condos, whatever. And that is, it's an even further annexation of land that isn't theirs. So I would hope that this plan isn't implemented. You know, the reporting in the Times of Israel said that this isn't Netanyahu's plan. Of course, this is his defense minister, but he's beholden to those people to even remain in power. So they have leverage over Netanyahu. So he can try to distance himself from this plan specifically, but he doesn't really have a lot of room to push back because he needs them to stay in power.
Yeah, no, I go way further than you. I mean, this is definitely Netanyahu's plan. They're just totally lying. They're saying, oh, look at my defense minister. He wants to set up a concentration camp. Whereas I am for openness. No, they have the same exact plan. Murder enough Palestinians that they run, and when they do, you grab their land. And let's be honest, can we be honest for a second? Because American media won't let you be honest. This is what Israel has been doing since 1948. In 1948, they came in, and you'd think that like there's this mythology in America that everybody went for a picnic and the Palestinians decided not to return. No, they murdered Palestinians in their homes, and they drove them from their homes, and that's why it's called the Nakba. You think they voluntarily left their homes of hundreds of years or thousands of years? No, 750,000 Palestinians were driven through a terror campaign that Israel started in 1948 to take that land. And now what are they doing in Gaza? A terror campaign where they kill Palestinians, so Palestinians are driven from the land, and then they'll take Gaza. And it's not my speculation. That is what their government is saying that they're going to do. We're going to keep murdering Palestinians. We're going to put them in a tiny little concentration camp, and we're going to push them out to other Arab countries, and we're going to take Gaza. They already have 70% of Gaza. It's not, there was all, in the beginning, it was like American media was like, oh, that's anti-Semitic conspiracy theory to say that Israel, the beloved Israel, would take Gaza. Now they're saying, yeah, they literally voted saying, we conquered Gaza and we're just going to take it. That's what they did in 1948. That's what they're doing now. That's what they did in 1967. You know, with this whole idea of preemptive war, where does it come from? Israel preemptively attacking all of its Arab neighbors in 1967 and going, oh, I think they were going to attack me. Hey, look at that, I attacked them first and destroyed all of their militaries before they could even get up off the ground. And then I took more land from them, including the occupied territories and the Sinai, more land, more land, more land. And every time Israel does the same exact thing that every greedy empire has ever done. Oh, I did it for self-defense. I had to do it for self-defense. That's why I attacked them first and took their land and murdered their people and stuffed them into camps. I had to do it for self-defense. No, it's for land. It's for land. It's super obvious. Okay, by the way, the Israeli citizens, they're a lost cause. I mean, I don't want them to be a lost cause. I want them to turn around, but they've lost their moral core. Let's be honest about it. We can't say it because it sounds bad, but it's not us that are saying it, it's them that are saying it. They asked in a poll in Israel of Israeli Jews, how many of you think that the Palestinians should be expelled from Gaza? 82% said yes, expel them, ethnically cleanse them. When they made it more specific, forced expulsion, we are going to just shove them into another land and just take their goddamn land. We're just gonna take it. What do you guys think? 56% of Israeli Jews said, yes, yes, kill them and take their land, forced expulsion. Okay, so look, nevertheless, I'm like, don't do any harm to the civilians of either side. But don't tell me that the Palestinians are somehow the aggressors. 47% of Israeli Jews in that same poll said, quote, when conquering an enemy city should act in a, this was a question, should they act in a manner similar to the way that the Israelites acted when they conquered Jericho under the leadership of Joshua, namely to kill all of its inhabitants? And 47% of Israeli Jews said yes, kill everyone in Gaza. That's not a genocide, that's a Holocaust. Nearly half of Israeli Jews voted to do a Holocaust on Gaza. I don't want any discussion about the morality of Israel. That's not even close, that's not on the table. Only war crimes are on the table. I hope to God Israel turns around, and I believe that any country can turn around. And I think that they're in a psychosis, just a blind rage and PTSD from all the pogroms and the Holocaust that they suffered. But they have to snap out of it because these things are just monstrous. They're beyond monstrous. Last thing. So how in the world, out of all of this, do I get to Trump getting a peace prize? There's one way, but it's near impossible. So forget Russia and Ukraine. If you get some peace, amazing. Pakistan, India, wonderful. Okay, good, good, good. But those are no. Look, what would be historic and worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize is if he got peace between Iran, Israel, and the Palestinians and got a two-state solution. Iran stops developing nukes, the Palestinians get a state, Israel gets a safe Jewish haven. Everybody wins. The 53 Arab countries already have a plan for it. They're happy, the world is happy, we're happy. Then by all means, Donald Trump earned a Nobel Peace Prize. But that's a giant if with a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage chance of happening. Why? Because every time Netanyahu comes to town, he slaps Trump around and goes, we're not gonna do peace. We're gonna offer him a total BS ceasefire. We're gonna lie to them. We're gonna get the hostages back, and then we'll go back to bombing them and stuffing them into camps and pushing them out of the country. We're gonna steal their land, Donald. Wake up. Help me steal their land. And Donald goes, oh, okay. Who did I get bribed by today? Oh, okay. Yeah, there are no Epstein files. Oh, yeah, totally. And yeah, of course, Palestinians, I'm gonna give them freedom from their lives by paying for you murdering them and stuffing them into camps. So no, Trump's not gonna do any of this. You think he's strong enough to stand up to Netanyahu? Well, I hope to God that he proves me wrong and that he is. But right now, he's taking the usual role of an American president, which is the butler of the Israeli prime minister. So those are facts. You can catch all sorts of feelings about them, but if you don't catch as much feelings about 17,000 dead kids as people's words about your beloved Israel, there's something morally off with you. So look in the mirror, and how about we all fight to save all civilian lives, even if they're Palestinian or Muslim. I know, an outrageous thought that those lives would have value. But yes, I believe that. And if you don't, again, go to a therapist and deal with yourself. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, like I said, a lot of Trump voters turning on Trump, some in a good way and a lot in a bad way. So we'll explain. All right, back on the social break here. Let's go to tyt.com members. Eclectic Miscellanea writes in, and Eclectic's got a good message for us on Operation Joy tonight, which we're gonna do with the members. He was on vacation, got a good story about this in that show that'll be for the members at 8 o'clock. All right, anyway, he writes that Israel and the United States are making an open mockery of international law. We're back to the law of the jungle, except now the savages ruling the jungle have nuclear weapons and 30,000-pound bombs. Well, the 30,000-pound ones are the bunker busters, those are ours. Clumsy Dragon says, let's all give shout out to South Australia for banning lobbying and political donations of any kind. Let's hope it catches on. Yes, I did not know that. Thank you for letting me know that. Smartest audience in the world. And South Australia, we're all incredibly jealous of you. Nice job. Your democracy will be infinitely better than almost any other if you keep that up. Art Guy says, Trump expects the Palestinians to self-ethnically cleanse to save him the trouble. Delusional. Well, you know, what they're hoping for is like in 1948, if we kill enough of them, they'll have to run for their lives and their children's lives, and that way we could just take their land. That is their current plan. Don't take it up with me. Take it up with Netanyahu and Katz, who are the genocidal freaks who are planning on concentration camps as we speak. Dr. Gonzo says, is it just mean or did the scene with Trump and Bibi around the table look like, okay, I was reading this blind. Some painting of the Nazis having a meeting over dinner. I swear it's uncanny. Look, I don't know. So I make the German analogies. The Germans killed 13 million people in gas chambers. That's not where Israel is now. Germans tried to kill all the Jews. That was a Holocaust. That's not where Israel is right now. But is Israel doing a genocide? Yes. Is it monstrous enough? Yes. Kelly K says, hey Netanyahu, you know what would help the Palestinians live in peace? Stop bombing the crap out of them and let them live on their land and stop illegal settlements in the West Bank. But then Kelly, how could they steal more land? And so it's disgusting. And I can't stand the liars who defend them in American media. I can't stand them anymore. Boomer Dragon Cat says, if Trump gets Putin out of Ukraine, I'll write him a recommendation myself. But that's another one, you're right, Cat, but like just getting a peace deal there doesn't get you a peace prize. Getting the Russians out of Ukraine, good, right? Is he gonna be able to do that? I've got it at near zero. Jenks left tricep of fury says, Jenks high and tight haircut, looking sharp, people are talking. Well, okay, thank you, brother, for lightening the mood, let alone the nice compliment. Also wrote in, another BB bribe to get more weapons to kill Palestinians. Works every time on the orange buffoon. To be fair, it also worked every time on the senile buffoon. Next TYT reporter says, since when can a terrorist nominate anybody for a Nobel Peace Prize? Yeah, that was hilarious. Here's Goebbels nominating me for a Peace Prize. Wow, it gives you a lot of credibility for the Peace Prize. Elforus on Twitch says, enjoy the Bezos bucks. We do appreciate it. If you have Amazon Prime, getting a membership for us on Twitch is free, but we still get the money. That's why it's called Bezos bucks. TYT.com/prime. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys, but also Cindy D and Mocha Funk. Thank you guys for joining by hitting that join button below. We appreciate it. Tulva Ostra, Dawn Whitehead, and CD Norse Dog Dad also gifted Young Turks memberships on YouTube. You guys are amazing. I love this community. All right, Jordan, what's next?
Take a look at this.
It's insane.
Yeah.
We were told there would be no, well, there's two things that are insane. One is the targeting of migrant workers, not cartel members, not gang members, not drug dealers, just construction workers showing up in construction sites and raiding them, gardeners.
Yeah.
Like, really?
You might hear that and think, oh, okay, good for Joe Rogan. But one progressive, political, engaged celebrity isn't buying it. While drawing praise from some, Joe Rogan's criticism of the Trump administration is triggering eye rolls from others. In response to an account sharing that video, Mark Ruffalo posted, "Dear Joe Rogan, it's a little late now to pretend like Project 2025 didn't exist and wasn't the playbook all along. You are either not that smart or not that dumb. It's hard to tell at this point." And while Project 2025 didn't explicitly call for rounding up day laborers and construction workers, it did call for expedited removals, which many warned would violate due process, and called for the canceling of many different legal statuses to make lawful residents eligible for deportation. From there, many argue that this was the inevitable result. Calling for an increased level of deportations would result in things like this. But Cenk, what do you make of Ruffalo's response here? Is this right? Is this the right tone? How should he respond to somebody like Rogan criticizing the Trump administration?
Well, we're gonna ask you guys, but I'm gonna taint the jury pool here by telling you my opinion in a second, although it doesn't usually move the poll much. You guys have strong independent voice, which I love. So we're asking you two different polls. One's in the live chat on YouTube as we do the show live 6 to 8 p.m. As we do every day, Monday through Friday. Anyways, when Rogan turns against Trump's immigration policy, we should A, commend him for turning around, B, criticize him for getting it wrong, C, neither. And then on our website, this is why I'm really interested in TYT.com, when Joe Rogan turns on Trump on any given issue, it's A, okay, by the way, let's look at, on the live chat, great, okay, good. Over, what is that, 63% or so? 62, 63% saying commend him for turning around. Anyways, on the website, what should we do? A, great that he's telling his audience Trump is wrong. B, useless, we already had the election. C, not going to affect anything because he'll go back to supporting MAGA in the next election. So curious what you guys think about that on TYT.com. Okay, so what do I think? I like Mark Ruffalo a lot. I think he's one of the best celebrities. He uses his name recognition for good 98% of the time. I mean, as far as I can tell, really 100% of the time. And he's one of the most progressive, one of the most down to earth, cares about the average American, average human being. That's all the lead up to me saying I totally disagree. So what are we yelling at the guy for? He's coming to our side. Well, how does that help? So, all right, Jordan, back to you.
No, I'm kind of in alignment with you on this, and it feels weird because, like you're saying, Ruffalo, I'm just in agreement with almost 100% of the time, and this, I think, probably not the best time to take a shot at Rogan. I think his audience is massive. We acknowledge that it is largely influential, and or his show is influential, and he's saying something that maybe they won't hear anywhere else. That said, I understand why people would criticize him in the first place. And for such a large and influential program, he very rarely does preliminary or prep research. And that's where you see conspiracy theorists, misinformation peddlers, or outright bigots come on the show and start to sow seeds of bigotry, hate, xenophobia, whatever. As I'd say independent or even progressive watchdog organizations have pointed out over the years, that show has been a breeding ground for a lot of things that have negative societal impacts. And people are often free to say whatever they want unchecked. And for somebody in his role, I would argue there's a responsibility to at least read up on what you're going to talk about. So as he endorsed Trump in the run up to the 2024 election, I think when you have a show that big, you can't just chalk it up to like, oh, I'm just having conversations, I'm just listening. No, you're like the biggest show on the planet. Like it doesn't really work that way. Like you have a responsibility to think through what you're going to say, who you're going to endorse, the impact of that. But then I go back to that said, look, he's criticizing Trump. Very few people are doing that. Very few people are breaking with Trump on these types of things. And the ones that do are being met with criticism from within their own ranks. So it is interesting to see who's willing to speak out and who isn't. I'm, slightly gonna diverge from Mark Ruffalo just on this one issue. What do you think?
Yeah, and look, it's having an effect. Of course, business interests are having a larger effect. But Donald Trump in his speech the other day, we're gonna cover it on a different story later in the show, talked about how, we might have to make an exception for farm workers and hotel and leisure industry, because a lot of people are complaining that we're just taking people from their jobs and stuff. So that's largely those industries that are greasing him up, et cetera. But there's a little bit of him sensing the independent podcasters and broadcasters like Rogan are beginning to leave the building, right? A lot of them are saying the same thing, which is where the American people are, which is, hey, you wanna round up undocumented criminals? No problem. You wanna close the border? No problem. In fact, good, okay? But you start rounding up regular people who've been here 10, 15 years who are going to their job, it's cruel and we don't like it, we don't want it. So they're reconsidering it. Now, of course, that's led to a different MAGA rebellion against that idea to Trump. But look at this, Charlie Kirk and the right wingers are saying, no, arrest them wherever they are. But Rogan and the independent podcasters are saying, no, don't do that, don't do that. So we have a significant schism, not just from Trump, but from Trump in two different directions and against one another. So A, that diversity of thought is great. B, the fact that the Rogans agree with us instead of the Charlie Kirks and the Donald Trumps is fantastic. And so, Jordan, do I agree with you that, I wish that Rogan had, challenged Trump more, done more homework on it, of course, right? But let's also be fair and recognize that the Democrats didn't even try to win their votes. Kamala Harris wouldn't go on any of those shows. And the Democrats are like, no, we will go on mainstream media. We are the establishment. We have 90 corporate CEOs on our side, right? Well, who do we think they were gonna back? Were they really gonna back a corporate politician? It's incumbent upon us to pick great populist candidates where the Rogans and Dylans of the world would go, okay, hell yeah, let's do that, right? And they don't have to be right wing. They could be populist left, but they can't be corporate stooges and robots and then go, I can't believe you supported the other guy. You should have supported our corporate robot instead. It's too much to ask for. So when he comes to us, take the win. For God's sake, take the win.
Yeah, I think there's one other thing that I just saw this week. So that Instagram or social media show that some people may be familiar with, Subway Takes. He apparently, the host apparently said that they recorded an episode with Kamala Harris and it was so wonky and so confusing and uncomfortable that there was a mutual agreement between her team and his that they would just never air the episode. And I think that's ultimately why she didn't do those types of shows. She really wasn't good at that type of stuff. She can deliver talking points, she can stay on script, but the strength of Rogan's show, and that's where you saw Trump and Vance and others shine, it's fluid. They're free flowing. That Trump episode is really interesting in that regard. Of course, not his content, but he talks about UFC and boxing for like the first 30 minutes. And it makes him seem relatable. It makes him seem like a normal guy. Kamala Harris could not do that. And of course, there are marked differences between what she ran on. And while, of course, I don't agree with it 100%, would argue it was somewhat better than Trump's platform. But she couldn't be relatable in those moments. And I think that's really what it was. It wasn't that they didn't want to win those people over or try. It's that she wasn't able. And that gets into the strength of the candidate. And I would argue having better policies will also help in that regard. So I'm with you on that front.
Yep. All right, guys. When we come back, massive, like enormous MAGA rebellion. And this time, not the Trump voters, not just the independents, not just the podcasters. No, the entire MAGA movement almost saying to Trump, are you kidding us? This is a betrayal beyond words. We'll tell you what that is when we return. Let's go to Super Chat. Instant Messenger Sama writes, and Henry Kissinger also got the prize. That don't mean nothing. We all know that. Even Daniela Weiss is still nominated for this year's Nobel. Yeah, getting nominated doesn't literally means nothing at all. You could nominate, Charles Manson. And actually Kissinger killed a lot more people than Charles Manson did. And he won the award, so I hear you guys. In Guns We Trust says, as a Christian, I love Palestinians and Muslims regardless of our religious differences. I'm hoping this is a turning point for Zionist propaganda and it'll die out over time. I still believe good prevails. I hope so too, brother, and I believe that too, and I do. And by the way, like if they just stopped the propaganda and the occupation and the endless wars, and Israel just became a country that didn't attack its neighbors and didn't get attacked, and it was safe, that'd be great, that'd be amazing. I would love that. So nobody's wishing harm on them. We're just saying, for God's sake, can you stop attacking and killing and taking land? Johnny says, is Netanyahu on his way out, or will this cause a deepening of the loyalty? Look, man, Netanyahu was like Bob in that movie, What About Bob? So Bill Murray played the character. You think he's gone? He's never gone. Open the door, there's Netanyahu. My whole freaking life, can't get rid of this terrorist politically. Fart Boys for Life, say it is what it is, I read these handles, says, also wanted to point out that Trump using Palestinian like a slur isn't surprising. It's textbook Trumpism. Dehumanize the oppressed to feed a base that confuses cruelty with strength. When facts fail, he defaults to dog whistles. A lot of truth in that. Confusing cruelty for strength is a very good way of putting it. Agnostic Gamer agreed that Kissinger getting the prize made it totally worthless. 36 Chambers Dragon says, I was always taught to forgive but don't forget. I think we should encourage Rogan but also make sure he knows what he has done as well. Yeah, Sure. What I would say to that is, if I was on a show, I'd say, hey, listen, brother, I hear you, but next time, can you be a little bit more skeptical of both sides? Like, let's dig in a little bit. You really think Trump's a populist? I mean, if all he had to do was, hey, what's the major bill he passed in his first term? Oh, right, massive tax cuts for the rich. What did it do? It created massive debt. So can you, I mean, to be fair to Rogan, in that 3 hours, the one legit question he asked was about the debt and how, from his first term. So I picked the worst example, but still, there's a lot of others that he could have held him to account on, and that would have been great. And I want the same standard for Republicans and Democrats. Okay, Susie Greenberg says, shouldn't we be trying to get Rogan on our side so we can have an us versus them takeover? We need Rogan. Yeah, it would be amazing to have Rogan on our side. And it's not like it can't happen. He endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2016. Of course it could happen. Anyway, all right. Panic on Funkatron says, how about Rogan do what TYT does and acknowledge when he gets it wrong? You know, that's a good question. I don't know how often he does that. Virginia, South Carolina says, guys looking great in the blue shirts. Well, thank you. All right, back on TYT, Jang and Jordan with you guys. Jordan, what's next?
Take a look at this.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the
Yeah, sure. Could I just interrupt for a second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Today, a reporter tried to ask Attorney General Pam Bondi about Jeffrey Epstein. But as you saw, President Donald Trump was not having it. Here's more.
This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
And we have a lot more to get to, including how MAGA is reacting to Trump's comments. But first, what do you think about those clips, Cenk?
Yeah, I think he's in a world of trouble. This tactic he's tried 1,000 times, which is like, oh, what a dumb question, fake news, blah, 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 right? And normally MAGA loves it, they eat it up, right? Zeke after a touchdown. So now though, they're like, what did you just say? We're all supposed to ignore Epstein? Nah, okay, so you're about to see all that from MAGA in a second. But I'm just gonna say here, just think about this throughout the story, okay? So now all the administrations, Biden, Trump, all of them have acknowledged that Epstein victimized hundreds of girls, right, and victims. So now the Trump administration is saying, de facto the other administrations were also saying it, but Trump has now explicitly said it, his team, saying, no, we could not, even though hundreds of underage girls were raped, we couldn't find a single culprit. We're not going to prosecute one person who did any of those rapes. And we're choosing not to. That's amazing. That's insane. How could you say we have on tape hundreds of child rapists. We're just choosing not to prosecute any of them. And that is what they're saying. And that's why people are livid.
We're gonna get to how exactly MAGA is responding, but first let's start with how Pam Bondi addressed that reporter after Trump eventually let her speak. Now, most of her response has to do with one specific detail from the Epstein case. The surveillance footage from the night Epstein died is missing 1 minute from 11:58 p.m. on August 9th, 2019 to 12 a.m. on August 10th, 2019. Here's Bondi explaining why that is.
In February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. There was a minute that was off the counter, and what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every year, every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
So how is the right wing reacting to all of this? Well, Megyn Kelly reacted to the news live. Let's take a look at what she had to say.
Good grief. That was no bueno, guys. She's nervous. And the truth is not her friend for whatever reason. I don't know. I wish I did. But what that tells me is the truth is not her friend. Trump didn't even sound persuasive, Tom. You know, when Trump's genuinely annoyed that something comes up, you know, this was him like, I am indignant that you would bring up Jeffrey Epstein when there are more important subjects.
Elon Musk, who recently accused Trump of being in the Epstein documents, has been posting up a storm since Trump's comments. Here is one of his many posts. How can people be expected to have faith in Trump if he won't release the Epstein files? On the other hand, Alex Jones is proposing that Donald Trump is deliberately choosing not to release the Epstein files in order to save the stock market. Take a look.
That's what Elon is saying, is that no, Trump is in the files. That would have come out before, when they were trying to stop him before. They're clearly coming after him. And I've never seen one piece of evidence to that. No, this all points towards, bare minimum, Trump believes, and it's probably true, that if it comes out a bunch of head bankers and politicians and leaders and business leaders are in this, which we know they were, that will crash the stock market. That will just destroy America's image in the world. And so it's so horrible that they made the decision not to bring it out.
Now, Laura Loomer, a Trump acolyte, is ferociously attacking Pam Bondi while refusing to speak ill of Trump. Take a look at this exchange. Trump, and I hope he does fire her, in response to, hey, Laura, who appointed Pam Bondi? And as a follow-up question, who has the ability to fire Pam Bondi? So they want Pam Bondi out. Meanwhile, Benny Johnson is insisting that this is all one big conspiracy designed to set up the Trump administration for failure. Take a look.
The entire operation seems so utterly bungled. You have to like assume that on the inside they're being played. You have to assume that this is something, this is a live grenade that the pin's been pulled and handed in order to discredit Team Trump.
Okay, well, we'll end with this clip of Tucker Carlson that was recorded before Trump's outburst. Carlson said he does not believe that Trump is in the files, but he also warned the Trump administration about what Americans will do if the government keeps betraying their trust. Take a look.
There are really only two potential explanations that I can think of. Maybe you've got another. The first is that Trump is involved, that, you know, Trump is on the list, that they've got tape of Trump doing something awful. I don't believe that for two reasons. One, I've talked to Trump about it a lot, and I know him. He's not that, you know, for whatever his sins, I don't think he's that guy, actually. I don't think he likes creepy sex stuff. That's just my view. But moreover, more, I think, convincing is that this is all information that the Biden administration had. And if there was evidence that Trump had been involved in illegal sexual activity, you think the people who made up Russiagate wouldn't have leaked it? Right. Come on now. When you allow something like this to happen, people are like, you know what? The system itself is beyond reform. There's no reasonable step I can take to improve this country or my own life. I have to do something crazy.
Yes.
Like you're creating true radicalism when you do stuff like this. Because what's the option?
Jag, there are a lot of theories here. Do any of them resonate with you?
No. So I'm going to tell you what my theory is in a second, and it's almost certainly the answer. But so first, let's break down the things that everyone said in those clips. So number one on Pam Bondi, that was 3 hilarious talking points. She said, "Oh no, all the tapes of them molesting and raping the girls, just kidding. It's just child porn instead. Child porn is a perfect excuse because I can't release child porn." And it turns out, oh, tape. I didn't mean the girls are on tape. We all know they're on tape. You've already said that hundreds of times. Oh no, I mean they are not on tape. It is child porn, and that is why I cannot release it. All right, I mean, maybe you'll find 7 morons in the country who will believe that excuse. I don't know if they thought that was clever. Then number 2, every prison video is missing a minute. Is it? Okay, great. Show me more prison videos missing a minute. I mean, come on. Insulting our intelligence. This is okay. And then but the most interesting part was when they asked, hey, was he part of an intelligence agency? And she had the curious answer of, I have no knowledge of that. You're the attorney general. You've been looking at these Epstein files on your desk for months and months and months now. At least the second question you would ask after who's on the list is, hey, why was he protected throughout? Is somebody else working with him? You never asked that question? And that just occurred to you when the reporter asked it? Oh, an intelligence agency. Well, I have no knowledge of that. I'll have to look into it. Come on, it's almost a confession, right? I mean, what an absurd answer. Of course you looked into it. You should have an answer, and you didn't prepare an answer, you lazy ass. Come on, man, you didn't think they were gonna, I guess they thought, no, this is mainstream media, we have them under control. They're not gonna ask if it was an intelligence agency. Well, they were wrong, I don't know who asked that question, but they were right. So go to Benny Johnson next, I love his theory. He's being set up from the inside. Well, Benny, then why is he so stupid that he fell right into that trap and was like, yeah, he raped hundreds of girls, but we're not gonna prosecute anyone. Somebody told me that and I'm just repeating it. Oh, I fell into his trap. Oh my God, after knowing Epstein for 15 years and I was already president for 4 years and you schmucks didn't realize I didn't release a list then. In fact, he died while I was president and I did nothing about it. And I said that the groomer was a very fine person twice. Anyway, so yeah, they made him do it. Okay, Benny. Okay, good luck with that theory. But Alex Jones's theory, of course, as always, is more insane. So his theory is that these pedophiles are too big to jail. That's why Trump is now wisely saying, you know what, that banker and that politician and that really rich person, they're just too big to jail. I mean, if we prosecute them for child rape, well, then we could have a problem with our economy. So I'm gonna let all the child rapists go because they're too big to jail. Go ahead, Alex, keep that theory and tell your audience over and over again how you think that pedophiles should be let go if they're rich enough or powerful enough. See if that one floats. Obviously, look, some of these guys are desperate because why are they desperate? It's normally they kiss Trump's ass. Where's the question, right? But now their own audiences are going, are you nuts? Are we really gonna defend child rapists? Are you insane after all these years of what you said about pedophiles and how they're taking over the government? And now Trump says he's not gonna prosecute a single pedophile even though we have him on tape? And you're gonna somehow go, oh yeah, that makes sense. If they're a big enough banker, we shouldn't? Okay, good, keep that theory until you lose all credibility. And then you'll see real crying and vomiting as he was pretending to do yesterday. Okay, so now the two super important things. One is, guys, they're gonna try to make Pam Bondi the scapegoat, right? So, Donald Trump, poor Donald Trump, he didn't have anything to do with it. It was just Pam Bondi. It's all her fault, not Israel's or CIA's. It's just Pam Bondi. No, it's not just Pam Bondi. She's the scapegoat. But they think they're gonna get away with it. They think they could even protect Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Go on X, go on any social media, don't say anything, just read MAGA comments. They now hate Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. They're done with them. They're like, you frickin' sellouts. So you just don't trust me, go read it for yourself. No, you're not gonna rescue any of these frauds, okay? And finally, look, there's only two possible theories. Jordan and I talked about it yesterday. One is that Trump's on the list, Clinton's on the list, everybody on both parties are on the list. Everybody knows this theory, right? And so they don't want to release it because it's too damaging. Number one, I don't believe that Trump could contain himself if Clinton was on the list. He has verbal diarrhea. If he had any important Democrats on the list, he's gonna say it. I guarantee it, I guarantee it. Okay, but more important than that is Trump grew up under the tutelage of Roy Cohn. And you know what Roy Cohn did? He would tape his sex parties and then use it as blackmail. Trump would have to be an extra level of moron to fall for that trick after he knows that trick. He saw Roy Cohn use that trick many times to get exactly what he wanted. So I'd be super surprised if he fell for that. Much more likely is who has enough power to stop the US government and both parties from hitting each other with devastating intel? Well, the intelligence agencies. So it's, to me, the only possible answers are CIA or Mossad or both. And so if you made me put money on it, I'd say the only force in American politics that cannot be criticized is Israel. The CIA can be criticized to no end, and the Democrats are really gonna protect the CIA? They're all gonna protect it. Trump, who hated his own intelligence agencies, is going to bother protecting the CIA and the deep state? Okay, I mean, if that's what you're gonna hang your hat on. No, Trump is now protecting the deep state and I trust him. Okay, go ahead, hang your hat on that one. But the one set of folks that in my lifetime are not allowed to be criticized by American politicians or media or government is Israel. So if you made me bet on it, I'd bet Mossad. And I'd probably lay down a good amount of money. Jordan, last word.
I think I don't know where I fall on the intelligence agency thing. I mean, could be we don't know, so I don't really want to speculate there. But what I thought was entertaining was throughout, of course, a lot of these justifications from some of his allies are funny. The outrage, of course, is interesting to watch, but Tucker Carlson's excuse or reasoning for why it couldn't be that Trump himself would be in the files is that he's talked to him a lot about it. Like that one got me so good. Yeah, Trump's just gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm in the Epstein files. It's all good. Come on, what do you mean you've talked to him about it? What's he gonna do? Admit it to you? That I thought out of everything got me the best.
Yeah, hard to argue with that one. Yeah. I know. I talked to the perp and he says he didn't do it. Oh, okay.
All good.
Oh, they were all good. Okay, but knowing that the Roy Cohn stuff, I mean, maybe Trump's that dumb. I mean, but there's something that has made both Democratic presidents and Republican presidents go, oh hell no, that we are never ever going to prosecute the child rapists. We're never going to release their names. We're never going to tell you anything about the worst pedophile in American history. And you tell me that it isn't a government secret of some governments? No, it's literally impossible. It's by definition a secret the government is keeping from us to protect someone or something. And now it's absolutely indisputable. And if you think those MAGA guys were had turned on Trump and are criticizing him, but they're trying to couch it in ways that maybe is manageable, etc. Go look at the MAGA voters themselves. Go on any social media, read anything from MAGA. They are livid about this, and they should be. Okay, oh shoot, we're out of time. God damn. Always my fault. All right. Okay, gotta admit it when it's you. Okay, and it is me. Anyways, check out Jordan on Rebel HQ. Much love, Jordan. We're gonna come back. We have MAGA turning on Trump again, but this time, not a good development. We'll explain when we return. Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, the defense contractors, the Wall Street, or the big pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
Indisputable, exclusive. Exclusive, disputable, exclusive. We brought you this first. No other news agency has this video. No other news agency has this story.
Every week on Indisputable, we do original, exclusive, investigative reporting you'll find nowhere else.
Our reports have been viewed by millions. Hosted by Sean King, Ben Crump, Senator John Ossoff.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
We catching these cases on camera. Just imagine the things that we don't see.
Our groundbreaking investigations and exclusive interviews bring you the real voices no one else wants you to hear. We tell the stories.
Imagine a prison that is so racist, the corrections officers contact me. That is a life or death situation being created. A black woman who was driving for Uber was allegedly assaulted by a white male passenger. After we got involved, roughly 24 hours later, the police all of a sudden opened up an investigation. What was going through your mind when bullets were simply flying inside of your vehicle?
Honestly, I thought I was going to die.
Did these officers ever say that you fit the description of somebody they were looking for? Did they say that?
Never.
Okay, that means they lied.
And we want you to be part of our truth-telling movement. Send pictures and video of stories no one else is telling and a 1 or 2 paragraph summary of the story to Indisputable's exclusive tip line at indvideos@tyt.com.
If you have more information about what's happening at this particular facility, please let me know.
Together, we're challenging the system, and together, we're making a difference.
I have the entire background to this story, and it is going to make your blood boil.
Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, unveiling the truth, empowering the people. Weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific.
They call them dumps, big, massive dumps.
Documents.
All right, back on TYT. Cenk and Yasmin Aliyah Khan with you guys. Yasmin, of course, is host on Rebel HQ. All right, Yasmin, you got a lot of great stories for us, so let's do it.
We do. Yeah, let's jump right into this first one.
Got myself into a little trouble because I said, I don't want to take people away from the farmers. People have worked on a farm for 14, 15 years, and they get thrown out pretty viciously, and we can't do it. We got to work with the farmers and people that have hotels and leisure properties too. We're going to work with them, and we're going to work very strong and smart, and we're going to put you in charge. We're going to make you responsible. And I think that that's going to make a lot of people happy. Now, serious radical right people, who I also happen to like a lot, they may not be quite as happy, but they'll understand, won't they? Do you think so?
Well, Trump certainly was right about those serious radical right people not being happy with his proposed plan for amnesty. But not only will they not be happy about it, this might actually break MAGA. So Cenk, before we get into all the details of this feels sort of like Trump is trying desperately to appease one faction of his base, knowing that it will upset or even completely alienate or break the other faction. So what we're seeing now is Trump kind of playing favorites. And it's not surprising which of these two MAGA factions he has decided to favor. What do you make of this, Cenk?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting schism. And so this is a break that MAGA has from Trump, but not in a positive way because they're going even further right wing. So the two sides as I see it are hardcore MAGA, what Trump, not us, but Trump called radical right, seriously radical right. And the other side has two sets of folks in it. One is some of the Trump voters that were independents and closer to the center, and the polling indicates that they're freaked out by Trump's plan to snatch up people in the middle of the country, people doing their jobs, etc. And his polling's been hurt by that. We'll show you some of the evidence on that. But the bigger factor on that side is business interest. Okay, say it together. Of course, of course.
Of course.
Right, so the hotel industries, the farming guys, the leisure industries, including, by the way, Donald Trump's businesses are in hotel and leisure, and he has used undocumented immigrants throughout his life. So those guys want an exemption. No, that's all for the, it's nice little optics about how you're a populist, but now give us our cheap labor back, right? So that's something they're not going to be able to come to terms on, right? One side is going to win and the other side is going to lose. That's why MAGA's kind of furious and fighting back for their position, which you're about to see.
Yeah, and this all kind of feels inevitable because these two factions of MAGA have always been present, right? There was always, like the more the rally goers, let's call them, and then there were the business people who were voting for Trump because it serves their pocketbooks and their bank accounts to do so. So over the past few months, we've seen Trump actually follow through on his promise of mass deportations and detainment of immigrants. So here's some reporting from NPR. It says new data is giving the clearer picture of exactly what that looks like. At least 56,000 immigrants are being held in ICE detention. According to the Deportation Data Project, a group that collects immigration numbers, about half the people in detention don't have criminal convictions. And that particular group of people is the group that has grown the most in recent months in these detention camps. So here's more from NPR. It says NPR's review of ICE data found that the number of people without criminal convictions in detention nearly doubled since May, more than any other group of detainees. But recently, Trump has turned his attention to farm workers and restaurant workers, hotel workers, hospitality people who are in the United States illegally, but not to target them. He wants to protect them now. So according to AP News, the chief executive director of the Ventura County Farm Bureau stated that 25% to 45% of farm workers stopped showing up to work due to fear of ICE raids. Here's what she said. She said, when our workforce is afraid, fields go unharvested, packing houses fall behind, and market supply chains from local grocery stores to national retailers are affected. This impacts every American who eats, which is all of us. We all eat, right? And Trump realized that that is a bad thing, good for him, especially for his wealthy friends who own businesses and rely on immigrant labor. And Cenk, as he pointed out, Trump is included in that cohort of business people. So during a rally on Thursday, Trump announced that he was working on legislation that would allow migrant farm workers who enter the country illegally to stay if their employer could vouch for them. So let's watch that.
The farmers, some of the farmers, many of you sitting right here, I have 4 friends right in the 5th row, but some of the farmers, you know, they've had people working for them for years, and we're going to do something. We're working with Christie, and we're going to do something that we're going to sort of put the farmers in charge. They work very hard, and they know them very well, and some of the farmers are literally, you know, they cry when they see this happen. If a farmer is willing to vouch for these people, in some way, Christy, I think we're going to have to just say that's going to be good, right? You know, we're going to be good with it, because we don't want to do it where we take all of the workers off the farms. We want the farms to do great, like they're doing right now. And we're working on legislation right now, Susie, right?
So generally, MAGA is not too happy about this, and they're starting to warn Trump that if he actually follows through with this legislation, it will break MAGA. So Charlie Kirk, one of Trump's biggest supporters, actually lashed out at Trump and the ruling class, pushing Trump to offer amnesty to farm workers. Take a look.
As I am doing this broadcast, and this is bigger than anything with Epstein, this is bigger than anything with tax cuts. It is happening right now in Washington, D.C. And I can say this from firsthand experience, that people are pushing President Trump for amnesty. They are pushing him for mass legalization of illegals. Now, President Donald Trump, of course, would never push for amnesty, but President Donald Trump said something at a rally on July 3rd, and my phone lit up like you wouldn't imagine. President Donald Trump speaking at the Iowa rally saying that we might need to do some form, he didn't use the word amnesty, but some form of soft amnesty. And I could tell you now through other reporting that I've been able to do and phone calls, there is a major push right now to do a bipartisan amnesty deal, a major push. People are trying to push the president. Hey, you got the money for ICE. Now we need to go move to the middle on immigration.
So the Daily Wire's Michael Knowles also slammed Trump on the matter. Let's watch him.
Serious radical right people who I also happen to like a lot. They may not be quite as happy, but they'll understand, won't they? Do you think so?
A relatively subdued response from the crowd. And President Trump acknowledges, he says, look, we love our radical right people, but they're not going to like amnesty for illegal aliens who work on farms. But, you know, they'll understand, right? And there's a subdued reaction from the crowd. And the reason is this. As I've said before, Trump gets it right 99.7% of the time. But I'm not just the cheerleading section for Trump. I really like the guy. I really like him a lot, as you know, and have for 10 years. And I think he's done a lot of great stuff. I think this could be a perilous objective for him. 11 million to 16 million illegal aliens in this country. If you want to actually start to rectify that situation, you can't just deport the ones with face tattoos. You do kind of have to deport Abuela. You do, eventually at least. You can't have just random carvets. Well, if you work on a farm, as if what? Illegals who work on farms can't commit crimes?
And it's not only Trump supporters who are breaking with him on this, it's also his own administration. So earlier today, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins went back on Trump's claim and stated there would be no amnesty offered to people like farm workers.
I can't underscore enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly.
All right, so but to that end, are there actually able-bodied Americans who are willing to do those jobs? Last month, Republican Representative Andy Harris suggested to reporters there has to be an effort to figure out how to make sure that we have the workforce we need, whether it's H-2A, H-2B, whether it's again a different category that will result in having an adequate number of workers here in the United States to keep the economy going. But it's unclear if and when that sort of legislation would be introduced, especially since you also have the likes of Tom Homan, who Trump commended actually during his speech announcing the legislation, stating that non-criminal migrant deportations would continue. Let's watch that.
You're in the country legally, you're not off the table.
I mean, I see people, saying we're arresting non-criminals. Well, they're in the country illegally. That's our job. And we told ICE agents in the process going out looking for the bad guy. And this is the problem with sanctuary cities. When we go to the community to go find the criminal, many times they're with others that may not be a criminal target, but they're in the United States illegally. They're coming too. We're going to force immigration law.
So, Cenk, there's a lot that is troubling about everything that we're watching right now. The question that I have is, who is in charge here? Who actually knows what is going on? And also the idea that, he started off promising gang members and criminals and whoever else, and now we're seeing all these other if you have a quota for how many immigrants you have to deport, you're gonna have to start deporting people who do not fit that very narrow category of criminals and gang members. This was always the inevitable end that was coming. And another thing that I find very upsetting about all of this, apart from the very obvious, is that this is yet another case of the Trump administration staring a problem in the face, seeing it coming and doing nothing to help resolve it. Instead, they're actually making it worse. I'm not just talking about immigration, I'm talking about jobs. I'm talking about how we already are living in a very unstable job market, right? People between AI and Doge, they are getting laid off from very high level jobs faster than we can figure out what to do with all of them. They're all newly unemployed. They're in the job market and they don't really know how to navigate it because it's all very new and very confusing. It's insane right now. And jobs that have been traditionally very reliable and stable are just not that anymore. So people are spending months of active job seeking only to cave and take positions that sometimes pay tens of thousands of dollars less than their previously held jobs. And now on top of that, we are deporting people who are doing jobs that don't maybe require formal educations, but they are more physically laborious jobs that frankly, most working class Americans just don't know how to do. So why did they implement any of these policies before considering what to do about the inevitable fallout of those policies? Who is in charge here? And Cenk, I guess the question I have for you is, what do you think their long-term goal is here? If they have one at all, if this all just wasn't some very short-sighted political gamble.
Yeah, I know what Trump's ultimate goal was, but I don't know who's gonna win this fight. And so that's, to me, super interesting. There's a couple of funny things I wanna tell you too, but first, the poll in the live chat here. If Trump introduces amnesty legislation, will MAGA break, in Charlie Kirk's words? Yes or no? Curious what you guys think. Oh, 54% saying yes. So yeah, I think that MAGA will be irate over this. It's just a step below, at least for super hardcore MAGA, step below Epstein files not getting released. So okay, let's talk about the funny stuff first. My favorite was Michael Knowles saying, now I'm no cheerleader for Donald Trump. I only agree with him 99.7% of the time. Glad to find out you're not a cheerleader. Okay. Then Andy Harris's quote, that's a Republican congressman. I can translate that for you. I did it, I put it in ChatGPT, okay? The translation is, we'll do whatever our corporate donors tell us to do. So the politicians in Congress, they don't care about MAGA at all. At all. They don't care about their voters. Democrats don't care about their base. Republicans don't care about, all they care about is, how do I make the donors happy while the voters don't find out that I don't care about them at all. I'm only serving the people who give me money. So that all that is super clear, right? Now we get to the interesting unclear stuff. If you notice, Trump was hesitant about it as he's saying it at the rally. He's like, and the seriously radical right, they'll understand. Do you think so? He asked the crowd. You think so, right? He asked it like 2 or 3 times because he's testing. This is what he does all the time. A/B testing, trial and error. So he's like, okay, so we give amnesty to the ones that the business interests want, right? And the one thing that Knowles was right about was the crowd was subdued. They did not look like they were like, yeah. So no, they were not enthusiastic about that at all. So I think that online media in a lot of ways is the reason why things are shifting and why there's so many fractures. Because in the old days, the business interests controlled all of cable news and all of mainstream media, they're all multi-billion-dollar businesses. That's why the politicians and the media would all say the same lies about economic issues. And Fox News and MSNBC would say the same thing about economic issues. Those are the super wealthy and powerful, and they had the same exact talking points. Now, the Charlie Kirks of the world started, from what I can see from the outside, certainly Dennis Prager, certainly Ben Shapiro, with just money, tens of millions of dollars just given to them by right-wing billionaires, basically for marketing, right? Go tell everybody how great tax cuts for the rich are, pretend they help the average American, go tell them how great drilling is for fracking and oil and gas, go tell them, they're just bought mercenaries that were basically marketing executives, right? But now something interesting has happened. Now they're getting just as much money, if not more, from their audience because of YouTube and other platforms. So now they're starting to serve a new financial boss, and that's their audience. Now that has a lot of upsides. To be free of the donor class is great. There is a thing called audience capture though. So if your MAGA audience says, hey, listen, I don't care what Donald Trump says, and I don't care how much you kissed his ass before, and I don't care what your donors tell you about kissing Trump's ass. But when he doesn't release the Epstein files, I'm pissed. So then a lot of the hosts are like, oh, okay, I don't want to, defy my audience. Yeah, me too. I'm so mad that they didn't release it. And maybe they mean it. I don't know. And I don't care as long as they say it should be released, right? In this case, their audience is pushing them further right and saying, no, deport the abuelas, as Noel said, right? That is not going to be popular. So what MAGA doesn't realize, because they're in a bubble, just like the people who thought Joe Biden was young and dynamic were in a bubble, and they just can't see straight. Like, he's the best Democrat in the country. Is he? Is he? Okay, and then for Trump, they're like, oh no, he's, and in this case, it's not really about Trump. Trump is in the middle here. They're trying to win over Trump. They're saying, oh yeah, the country loves it when you deport people's grandmothers. Do they? The polling indicates they do not. And so which way is Trump gonna go ultimately, with the majority of the voters and the majority of the donors, or with his hardcore base? Well, many times he's chosen his hardcore base, but that's a lot on the other side. So, but on the other hand, can they really pass any kind of amnesty bill or a pathway to citizenship bill in Congress with Trump in charge? I would be shocked.
I mean, it's kind of like just like the overall goal is so muddled, and it feels like they're just making it up as they go. And with Trump, he's usually somewhat predictable, right? Like, he plays to the crowd, we know that, but more so than that, he plays to the money, to the big money. He cares about himself and his money. And if anything good comes out of that for the American people, it's because ultimately he doesn't care about the people. He cares by extension of himself for his own legacy and his extended long-term image. But this administration, they do this thing that drives me crazy whenever you see it in like movies and television shows. He does this thing where he tells, he doesn't show, right? He says, oh yeah, people love this. They don't love it, like there's all kinds of data that says that people do not support this, people do support this. And he'll say, oh, the people, they don't like that. Like when the example that comes to mind is when he told people that the American people love working and they're mad about having holidays off like Juneteenth. That's just a very recent example. But he does all these things and it's so ridiculous. And he has to get that feedback from his rally crowds because, as we know, that is how he has implemented some of his most popular or longest lasting, I'll say, policy decisions and legislation. Build a wall happened as a rally cry at a rally and people cheered for it. So he was like, all right, well, I guess we'll build a wall, So it doesn't feel like there's any kind of strategic planning here. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of long-term thinking here. It just feels like they're trying their best to appease as many people as they can while getting exactly what they want out of this deal. Trump doesn't want to upset his very, very wealthy friends. He doesn't want to upset his own business dealings and the Trump corporation and all that entails. We all know that he employs illegal immigrants. We all know that he doesn't pay his workers. We all know that he loves cheap labor. So a lot of these things that he is promising to the American people, to his MAGA base, saying he's going to deport all these millions of people, this was the inevitable conclusion of that promise that we were going to get here, and they would have to kind of pivot at some point to being like, okay, well, maybe not just the criminals, maybe not just the gang members, because maybe your grandmother, she could probably also commit a crime, so let's just deport her as well.
Yeah, last things real quick here are, look, I know why Trump does what he does. In fact, we've talked about this before, back in 2015 and even earlier than that, Trump's top aides described how he went on conservative talk radio to test his message. So he would test pro-immigrant messages and anti-immigrant messages. And anti-immigrant messages, of course, unsurprisingly with a right-wing audience, worked a lot better. And so he decided to go in that direction. But look at that story that they admit to. It's in my book. You can see the exact quotes just as coming as the book. That shows you Trump doesn't care. He doesn't he doesn't care at all about any of the policies, let alone immigration. He's just like, okay, what's going to get me power and fame and money? Okay, so anti-immigrant, great, then I'm anti-immigrant. But he doesn't, since he doesn't care, that's why there's such a fight. If he had principles, this would already be over. Like if you said to me, okay, your donors say they don't want paid family leave, but your voters do. Which one do you want? No, I want paid family leave. I think paid family leave is the right policy for America. And yes, the voters are overwhelmingly in favor, but that's not a question for me. It's a question for Trump because he doesn't actually have any policies or principles other than Trump, 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 Trump. And then, so finally, that Brooke Rollins suggestion, the agriculture secretary, saying, oh, no, we're not gonna need farm workers from now on because all those people we just kicked off of Medicaid, if they don't want their kids to die from cancer, then now they're gonna have to go into the farms and do that job. And by the way, at the same rate, because our business interests don't wanna pay a single nickel more. Good luck with that plan, okay? Well, I don't want you to have any luck with that plan, but that plan's a disaster and has a 0% chance of success. So they're gonna collide at some point. Who wins? I don't know.
Yeah, and just even hearing Trump talk about the radical right is interesting because it's like, who does he think is a radical right? And hasn't he just been empowering these people all along? And again, this is why we are where we are today. And as he said, if he had any values, we wouldn't also have all this flip-flopping that he does because he would know where he stands on things and it wouldn't be so much of a question of where he stands from day to day. And in the next story, we're gonna see a lot more of that actually.
All right, so let's take the break then and do the next story. More Trump disasters. He starts the disasters. A third of the time he gets out of the disaster by flip-flopping and then declares victory. Will that be the case this time? Come back and find out. All right, let's go to Super Chat. Mark Jacobs writes in, now the Democrats have a chance to get some of the Trump voters who are disappointed, but unfortunately, they're scolding them, so they've learned nothing. Well, Mark, you're speaking my language. When somebody says they'd like to come to your side, the correct answer is yes, and welcome. Michelle Moody says, how many people in the files are Trump's biggest donors? Good question, Michelle. That could be another factor. Dawn Whitehead says, my favorite Neil Diamond America song played at work. That song has lost its meaning under the Trump regime. It made me sad. Dawn, I love that song too. When I was in Turkey and I was missing my friends in America on summer break, I'd constantly play like, coming to America. Yeah, so look, don't worry, we're gonna bring America back. Mad Mama writes in a couple of times, why is Maxwell still in jail if there's nothing? That's a good question. And why did Epstein kill himself right before he was about to be exonerated, apparently, because apparently there's no evidence against him. I mean, these are just maniacal things to say. That's why no one is believing what Trump is saying about this. She also wrote in, what happened to we've been friends for 15 years, he likes him young, ha ha, and everything else that Trump said before about Epstein. Indeed, I don't know what percentage of MAGA realizes that. Every time I said it in the past, they were like, what? No, that's crazy, it's gotta be fake news. And now a lot of them are like, yeah, we know. Titan writes in, I don't think we should commend or criticize Rogan if he turns. We should just join him if he turns. Well, he's joining us, so happy to have him is my point, and I think you agree. I'm just gonna read portions of handles that are like this, so now you know. Anyway, I'll say Boys for Life wrote in, so I was sitting in a security clearance interview, all serious, right? The investigator leans in and goes, are you or have you ever been affiliated with any terrorist organization? I look him dead in the eye and say, absolutely not. I'm not with Al Qaeda, not with the Taliban, not with Hamas, heck, not even with the IDF. There was a long pause. He blinked, I blinked, and then I asked, am I cleared or do I get flagged twice now? And then there's a misspelling there, so I can't read it. Okay, anyways, that's a fun little exercise. I'm glad that he didn't arrest you, but for being sarcastic about Israel. But you're right to say that. I mean, IDF has killed way more people than Hamas, way more innocent civilians, and 500 times the kids. Catch a Butterfly says on Twitch, I thought there wasn't any footage, and now they come up with this footage. Sus AF. Indeed. Gal471 says, I never saw Joe Rogan as MAGA. I always thought he was an independent that is easily swayed, and Trump and MAGA swayed him. But he's also open-minded and will listen and try to make up his own mind if given the correct facts. Gal4, I think that's exactly right. That's how I analyze him as well. But to be fair, I don't think a lot of people do say that he's MAGA. I don't even think that the folks on the left who hate him will go as far as saying he's MAGA, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong about that. Michael Napin says, is Yaz hosting from an antique design shop?
No, this is my office. This is my room, but I rotated the camera. I rearranged it.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. We got Project Joy coming up for the members. Perfect time to become a member. We'll see if you guys did the project that I asked you guys to do of creating happiness every day. All right, it'll be fun for the members. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. And Alyssa Morgenstern, thank you for hitting that button and joining. Lovely to have you with us. All right, yeah, so what's next?
All right, something a little less joyful. Let's roll the tape.
90 deals in 90 days is possible.
I've always wanted to ask you for the last 90 days about your comment on April 7th when you said 90 deals were possible in 90 days. We're almost up. And I just wonder, was your thinking at the time that it really was an aspirational number, or are you kind of disappointed in 2 for now?
I'm happy with the progress we've had.
All right, well, that was Peter Navarro, the senior counsel for trade and manufacturing in April, and Navarro again appearing on CNBC yesterday. So as you can see, the Trump administration is walking back some of their messaging on tariffs already, and that's because their self-imposed tariff deadline is coming up very, very quickly with only a few deals to show for it. So we have more clips where that one came from, including Trump himself sounding very extremely confused about what is even going on with these tariffs. He doesn't know. So Cenk, I feel like I just asked you this with the last story, but who is in charge here? Is there anyone stealing this, the proverbial ship at this point? Or is the Trump administration just completely clueless and off the rails? Do these people have a plan?
Yeah, it's 2 different questions there, but on this one, I think it's super clear. So because on things like immigration, there's different forces that are pulling at Donald Trump, and he doesn't really have much of an opinion himself. But on tariffs, this is all Trump. Trump had this idea for decades. He's on tape talking about it well before he ran for president because he's an idiot. And he thinks, in the 1890s, we didn't have an income tax. We just had tariffs and it was enough to pay for the government. Yes, in the 1890s, that was true. He can't get it through his orange head. It's not the 1890s. That's totally impossible now. And you can't reverse time. The economy is completely different. Nothing is the same. And no, tariffs. No one else believes in tariffs. It's only Trump. Especially these type of huge tariffs and not related to reciprocal, not related to anything, right? So this is classic Trump blunder. Even his like super right-wing, advisors, et cetera, they don't want him either because this doesn't help business interests. They're mainly interested in helping corporations and their donors, and this doesn't help. This is pure Trump, pure idiocy. And the reason why they don't seem to have a plan is because it's all Trump, and Trump never has a strategy. I'm gonna do tariffs. They're gonna be 145%. Okay, they're gonna be 45. Okay, they're to 30, 10, back to 30, back to 45. He doesn't have a plan because he's an idiot. And so if someone else had a plan, at least there would be some rhyme and reason to it. The reason why this is so scattershot is this whatever popped into Donald Trump's mind, in the last minute.
Yeah, and whenever you're working with money and numbers, like you have to be a little bit more deliberate in the way that you're executing these things. You would think that he would know that as a very successful businessman and billionaire. Alas, here we are. All right, so here is what you need to know about the tariffs. So in early April, Trump announced very hefty reciprocal tariffs, he called them, but later paused those tariffs. He stated that countries would have 90 days to make a deal. July 9th, AKA this Wednesday, tomorrow marks 90 days. So far, the Trump administration has announced the frameworks of trade agreements with the UK, China, and most recently Vietnam. That's not exactly 90 deals in 90 days, but maybe my math is wrong somewhere. So the Trump administration is moving the goalpost again, as they do. Take a look at this.
What President Trump is concerned about is the quality of the deals, not the quantity. As you could imagine, as he started herding the cats and trying to get everyone across the finish line, when he said that there's a chance that countries could boomerang back to their April 2nd reciprocal tariff levels, we've had a lot of people change their tune in terms of negotiations. So my mailbox was full last night with a lot of new offers, a lot of new proposals. So it's going to be a busy couple of days. But importantly, too, that President Trump has said that the countries would not go back to the reciprocal rate until August 1st.
All right, well, on Sunday, Trump and the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, they were asked about the administration's position on tariffs, and here is what they had to say about that.
Mr. President, do the tariff rates change at all on July 9th, or do they change on August 1st?
What are you talking about?
Tariff rates, do they change on July 9th or August 1st?
No, they're going to be tariffs. The tariffs are going to be the tariffs. I think we'll have most countries done by July 9th, yeah. Either a letter or a deal.
But they go into effect on August 1st. The tariffs go into effect August 1st, but the president is setting the rates and the deals right now.
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing. What do you say? The tariffs are going to be the tariff. Anyway, so Trump then proceeded to completely contradict his own position on the tariff deadline. So let's watch what he said yesterday, followed by what he said today, because they are different.
Is the August 1 deadline firm now? Is that it?
I would say firm. No, I would say firm, but not 100% firm.
August 1st, you've said is the deadline. What incentives do countries have to negotiate? It seems that deadline keeps moving. It was April 2nd, now it's...
We didn't move, no. It's always been August 1st.
Firm, but not very firm. Maybe like firm tofu or a firm mattress. That's what came to my mind when he said that. So we've got even more tariff updates where that came from. Yesterday, the Trump administration sent letters to 14 countries who have not yet agreed to a trade deal. In the letters, Trump informed those 14 countries that they will be facing tariff rates similar to the ones that he announced on his so-called Liberation Day. Some tariffs are a little bit higher than what he announced back in April, while others are a little bit lower. The tariffs range from as low as 25% to as high as 40%. Trump also threatened to raise those tariffs if the countries try to retaliate with their own tariffs. Moreover, Trump is threatening tariffs against any of the BRICS nations. So BRICS, just a refresher, is a group of now 10 countries whose original members were Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Notably, Iran is also a BRICS country. On Sunday night, Trump wrote this on Truth Social. said any country aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS will be charged an additional 10% tariff. There will be no exceptions to this policy. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, so we have talked a lot about how Trump is handling his tariffs, but what do the voters actually think about his trade policies? Well, Americans and especially independents are not loving what they're seeing. Here is CNN's Harry Enton with more, always a favorite.
Think tariffs hurt the economy. You know, go back to September of 2024 when Donald Trump was running for president, running for that second term. Just 39% thought that tariffs hurt the economy. Look at where this number has jumped up to in June of 2025, 57%. And just 28% of Americans, voters, think that tariffs are now good for the US economy, including just, get this, 16% of independents disapprove of Trump's trade policies. In January, it was 40%. Up like a rocket, up to 54% now in June. Just 35% of Americans approve of his trade policies. And get this, just 30% of independents approve of his trade policies.
All right, Cenk, so Trump has now demonstrated on video in public that he doesn't know anything about his own tariffs. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know who he's tariffing or how much or why. And he doesn't know when he's gonna be implementing his tariffs. And in the meantime, the American people are left just wondering what is going on and how their lives are going to be affected by all of this. And maybe the worst part of all of this, and that's, take that with a grain of salt, is the fact that no one knows how they can personally proceed, right? No one knows what life is gonna be like a week from now or a month from now or 6 months from now. How is anyone supposed to plan their lives when there's so much uncertainty and so much instability when it comes to their money and the economy? Ultimately, we're seeing things like all these polling results showing how much people disapprove of these tariffs from before to now. And it's growing, right? And it's especially amongst independents, especially amongst Democrats. I have to assume that the Republicans who still support this policy just aren't paying attention or they don't really understand the mechanics of it. But ultimately, life has not gotten better for people. And certainly it hasn't gotten better at the rate that Trump promised that it would. He said he was gonna come in January and just fix everything for the American people. And that is hyperbolic, but at the same time, I feel like the people who voted for him actually believed that he was this brilliant deal maker and he could come in and negotiate all of these tariffs and all these deals with all these different countries and he would get it done. But grocery prices have not gone down. Things have not gotten better. If anything, they're getting worse. We're seeing all of our workers getting deported or laid off from their jobs. People are not happy. They're not better off now than they were 3 months ago. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, so this one has a pretty clear conclusion in my mind. First, let's note that Trump was hilarious on that July 9th or August 1st. He had no idea. It's your policy, brother. It's your policy, and solely yours. You're the one who came up with it. Just know the bare minimum, right? It's the tariffs are tariffs, tariffs are tariffs, and Lutnick has to step in and go, yeah, no, August 1st. We told the schmuck, but he can't keep anything in his head, right? Well, where did July 9th come from? Because that was the 90-day reprieve that Trump gave earlier when his Liberation Day, and the stock market got liberated from a couple of $1 trillion. So he's like, I mean, I'm doing a 90-day reprieve. Comes out on July 9th. Now in July 9th, did they have 90 days, 90 deals ready as they asked them are? No, they have honestly no deals. None of those, including the Vietnam one, which is the furthest along, has any specifics. They haven't announced it at all. Trump just every once in a while goes, yeah, that's it, Israel and Gaza have a ceasefire. No, they don't. That's I have a trade deal with China. And then China has to come out and go, no, we don't. You just made that up. You can't just say, hey, you have a trade deal with China when China didn't agree. So I sent them a letter, and then I'm sending strongly worded letters. This is nonsense. None of that is gonna work. And so, but the thing that you should be really concerned about is when he said nobody better go towards what the BRICS are doing. So if you read more into it, why? What are the BRIC countries doing? They're considering going away from the US dollar, and that would be catastrophic. That would be a huge problem for America. So he's made this condition so bad that the other countries have enough leverage. Remember, BRICS has China and India in it, let alone Russia, Brazil, South African, those that Yaz read for you guys. So that's a big, giant block now representing about 40% of the population of the world. If they decide to go away from the dollar, that hurts our interest rates, that greatly increases our debt, it reduces our economic power, it's a disaster in the waiting. So he can threaten and bully people all he likes, but now finally the conclusion is what's gonna happen? Some of the rates he's saying on August, says July 9th was totally unrealistic, so they moved it to August 1st. And he's saying, no, that's it. August 1st is final, and we're gonna do 40% on some countries, 30% on other countries. Yeah, they might for a week or 2 weeks. I mean, the outer edge would be 2 months, but I can't imagine that it would go 2 months. And then they're gonna give up because it's a dumb idea, it's never gonna work. He's gonna just get back to where we were before and declare victory and pretended he did master negotiations because the rest of the world has figured out, yeah, call his bluff. And when you call his bluff, he's got nothing. So that's where the rest of the world is. That's why they're not doing deals with us. And when his bluff gets called, after the economy does poorly enough, he'll have to turn around. He won't have a choice. And he's a massive flip-flopper. So a turnaround is nearly guaranteed. Okay.
Well, I was just gonna say very quickly, I know we have to go to break, but I did say a while ago that I feel like one of the things that's gonna save like this country from Donald Trump is that a lot of the other countries that he's trying to do deals with and trying to make threats to, they're just not gonna take us seriously anymore. And maybe that'll be for the best for all of us.
Yeah, no, I don't want that happening. I want a competent leader back in charge of America so that we don't have this clown show. Okay, all right guys, we gotta take a break, we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. Let's go to TYT.com members. Wang John says, forget Navarro. What does Ron Vara think? God, when I miss good jokes like that, I beat myself up. All right, great job, Wang John. Fab4 says, maybe Shop TYT should have a shirt, take yes for an answer. Could be interpreted in a lot of ways. We have the look up shirt, and then I didn't think of this, and then somebody said, if you're a woman, it could mean a different thing. You're telling guys, don't look there, look up. So I hadn't thought of that, but I love that shirt, and we've got the Get Caught Trying series, etc. So check out shopdyt.com for that. Rebel Dragon says, yep, I live in Ventura County. Our local strawberry guy was monitoring the ICE app while selling his produce. You see way less workers when driving through the farmland out there. Guys, you wanna hear something haunting? We're hearing stories of like people selling flowers or fruits, but you'll see all the flowers or fruits and the person's gone. ICE is taking them, and I mean, it's just like out of a horror movie. And that's why the numbers are down for Trump. People don't like that. That's cruel, and they're not interested in it. The only people interested in it is the hardcore MAGA. Sus Pal says, my MAGA Facebook friends are in an uproar over the Epstein stuff. Yeah, no, nobody can contain them. No, they're not kissing up to Trump on that one at all. DJ Flood Music says, so Jones thinks that Trump would rather protect investor profits and American integrity by keeping the Epstein files secret. That's a good question, and apparently he does. And I don't know, does he think that's a good idea? That's unbelievable. Durge writes in about the idea that it's not, it's just child. Well, that's what Caroline Levitt said. I'm sorry, Pam Bondi said it was just child porn that Epstein had. And Durge asks, child porn starring people you will recognize. Yeah, that's the difference, right? It is actually, in a sense, child porn. She's not lying. It's just with some of the richest and most powerful people in the world. Jeff Vasco says, Bondi's so inexperienced, she doesn't follow Trump's lead and ignore the Epstein question, LOL. Helen 007 says, not surprising, Trump is basically saying, who the F cares about children being trafficked / assaulted? All these gross hypocrites. Art Guy says, fake quote Trump, yes, everyone should please stop talking about that criminal I'm involved with. Indeed, and I won't have time for the rest. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Yaz, and Stanley Smith. Thank you for gifting a membership. Appreciate it. Yaz, what's next?
Okay, one last quick story. Cancun Cruz strikes again, because you guys know how much I love to talk about Ted Cruz. So following the tragedy in Kerrville, Texas over the holiday weekend, Texas Senator Ted Cruz was once again missing in action. But not only was he missing in action, he says he returned to Texas as quickly as possible once he heard the news of deadly flash flooding in the Texas Hill Country, but new reporting actually suggests otherwise. So Ted was on vacation with his wife in Athens, Greece over the holiday weekend. And this was just a day after the Guadalupe River in Texas rapidly rose and flooded the surrounding area. And Ted Cruz was spotted touring the Parthenon. Someone saw him there and told the Daily Beast, quote, he was with his family and a lone security guard. As he walked past us, I simply said, 20 kids dead in Texas and you take a vacation? He sort of grunted and walked on. His wife shot me a dirty look. Then they continued on with their tour guide. Meanwhile, emergency workers in Texas were desperately searching for 20 campers who went missing in the flood. I think the current death toll right now is up to 109 people, last I checked. The flood has turned out to be one of the deadliest floods in over a century. So this interaction, while embarrassing for Ted, also disproves the claim from his own office that he returned to Texas following the news of the flood, quote, as fast as humanly possible. Flight records also indicate that there were several earlier flights that Ted could have been on, flying from Athens to San Antonio. Of course, this story is making headlines now because not being there for Texans is kind of the thing that Ted Cruz does these days, right? It's like his thing now. He's making a pattern of it. And the thing that he and his supporters love to say is, what could he have done even if he was there? Well, since Ted has been home, Ted has appeared on Fox News to discuss the flood from Kerrville, and he's been on the phone trying to get support for the affected community and also from the president. So he is doing something now that he is back in Texas. But there's a few different angles here, Cenk. The most obvious is that, let's be fair to Ted Cruz, right? There's no way that he could have known what was going to happen in Texas while he happened to already be away. This is not the same as when he left Texas in the middle of a disaster. That was extra bad, right? But without taking away from the tragedy itself, there seems to be two different responses whenever something like this happens. There's the actual government response to the crisis whenever it happens, and then there's the response to the response, right? The response to the tragedy. And while sometimes you can argue that the latter takes away from the former, the latter is also a very important part of holding our elected officials accountable. So now the question becomes, is Ted Cruz actually a good leader? And do the good people of Texas deserve better than Ted Cruz, even if maybe they don't realize it yet?
Yeah, so first off, he is a little bit unlucky with the vacations.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of Karen Bass a little bit. And so I thought people were a little unfair to her about the Ghana trip, a little unfair here. On the other hand, they do have to hurry back. I mean, when your town's on fire, you should hurry back, or your state is flooded, you should hurry back. And there is empirical evidence that he didn't hurry back because the guy at the Parthenon said 20 kids dead already in Texas. So if the other tourists knew, well, certainly Ted Cruz knew and should have known and should have gotten his ass back to Texas, right? And chose not to. Then the last part of it is, I mean, a natural disaster versus your wife. Which one are you gonna pick? Which one are you gonna side with? Because I get a sense that she's not happy when he leaves the vacations early. So tough situation for Ted, but it's literally impossible to have any sympathy for him on anything.
Yeah, I will reserve all of my sympathy for the victims and for their families. It's very sad what's happened over there. The Guadalupe River, the Guadalupe, that's a very popular tourist destination during the summer. A lot of Texans flock there from Dallas, Houston, wherever. I've floated on that river so many times. It's a good time. It's very sad what's happened over there. And I hate to be like thoughts and prayers, but like, yeah, I really hope that something comes through for these people. And there's a lot of ways to volunteer to help them. And Ted Cruz could probably take a hint from some of those people.
Yeah, I mean, the only good news about him not rushing back is it's not like Ted Cruz was gonna make a difference. All right, guys, Project Joy or Operation Joy is up next. So that's for the members. So hit that beautiful join button underneath the video on YouTube or tyt.com/join. And we're gonna try to spread a little bit of joy in the world, or you guys are, and we'll try to join in as well. All right, see you guys there in a minute.